Hello there, I'm the cardboard robot, proudly made of recycled pizza boxes and held together by sheer willpower. And if there are two things you absolutely need to know about me, it's this. One is I love roguelikes. And two is I'm absolutely obsessed with Fromsoft games. Games that supply me with pain and permadeath are unironically some of my favorite titles, and I really don't think there's a more famous example of this than Elden Ring. I've put so much time and energy into Elden Ring that it's physically disturbing.
Wait, what? Excuse me? Okay. He just... I hate when the game decides... Oh my god!
So when I heard about Elden Ring Nightreign, a roguelike set in the unforgiving world of Elden Ring, I practically short-circuited with excitement. I've been sitting for months with my calendar marked, waiting with bated breath to finally play what I figured would be the culmination of everything I've ever wanted from a game. Challenge, excitement, difficulty, a little bit of fan baiting. This thing looked like it had everything. So naturally, I jumped in headfirst the absolute second the game unlocked, and after spending several hours on and off stream getting kicked around, lost, and mildly betrayed by RNG, I've come away with thoughts. Strong ones, conflicting ones. So let's get into it. Here are my initial thoughts and review for Elden Ring Nightreign. Before we get into it though, if you like Elden Ring, FromSoft games, Dark Souls, RPGs, or gaming in general, how about you hit the like button down there, and maybe even subscribe. It sure would mean a lot to this here robot. You could also follow me over on Twitch, link is in the description. Enjoy! Elden Ring Nightreign is a roguelike adventure game released by Fromsoftware. It's essentially the love child of, surprise, Elden Ring, and actually a surprise, Fortnite. Now, you might say, gee whiz, cardboard, because apparently you're a 1950s schoolboy. Fortnite isn't a roguelike. And yes, you're right, Timmy. Gold star for you, buckaroo. Despite the genre difference, though, Fortnite is honestly the most apt comparison I can come up with for how the game actually plays. Here's the deal. Your main goal in Nightreign is to sprint across a wide open chunk of the lands between, frantically collecting runes, desperately scavenging for better gear, and occasionally wondering why that enemy had 3 great swords and a grudge. All the while, a big ol' ring of ominous blue fire slowly shrinks around you, forcing you inward and limiting your movement until, surprise, you're trapped in a tiny zone with no escape where a boss fight awaits to either reward you for your efforts or remind you that hubris is the folly of man. Sound familiar? It should, because that gameplay loop is way closer to Fortnite's Battle Royale format than anything you'd see in The Binding of Isaac, Hades, or your go-to roguelike dungeon crawler. You're not descending floor by floor, room by room. You're being herded like a panicked sheep into an increasingly claustrophobic showdown. A showdown that, if you're lucky, you'll come out the other side a little stronger, a little more runes rich, and a lot more paranoid. At the start of each run, you get to choose from a selection of pre-built character classes, each one essentially a ready-to-go Elden Ring build with its own flavor and flair. Think of it like ordering off a Soulsborne a la carte menu. Do you want strength, the I turn everything into mush build, maybe a dexterity build with a sprinkle of I dodge like a ninja on speed? Whatever your playstyle, there's probably a class that'll scratch that particular itch. Each character also comes equipped with a unique ability and ultimate move, kind of like their own personal party tricks for ruining someone's day. They aren't just tacked on gimmicks either, they're powerful tools that can really swing a fight in your favor when used strategically. Whether it's using your ultimate to explode your enemies into a red mist doing huge AoE damage, or literally just punching an enemy really, really, really hard. These abilities give each class a distinct identity and a combat rhythm. What's really impressive is that the classes all feel different, without falling into the usual trap of a few good classes and then a bunch of filler. None of them seem horribly underpowered, and each one has its own clear niche. Whether you're a fan of high-risk glass cannons, tanky juggernauts, or magic-slinging weirdos, there's a class that will suit your taste. And more importantly, they all feel viable. It's a rare treat in a game like this to actually get to say, pick what feels fun, and not immediately regret it 15 minutes later. The main gameplay loop of Nightreign unfolds over what the game claims are 3-day night cycles, but it's actually just 2 proper days and a boss room pretending to be a whole 3rd day, but we'll unpack that whole deception in a minute. During the actual day 1 and day 2 of your run, you've got a full daylight phase to roam the maps at your leisure, or, as leisurely as one can while being surrounded on all sides by monsters that want to kill you. You're going to spend this time doing all your usual soulsy things, fighting enemies, exploring ruins, collecting runes, leveling up, scrounging for better weapons and gear like some sort of insanely violent raccoon. And as the day wears on, the infamous Fortnite fire ring begins to close in, steadily shrinking the playable area and turning your leisurely scavenge into a frantic sprint toward safety. Then, once night falls, surprise! You're locked into a boss fight. No turning back, no takesies backsies, just you and whatever half-decent gear you were able to scrounge up from a chest in the first 2 minutes of the run. So, after the second night boss, the game suddenly hits fast forward hard. You enter what it dramatically calls Day 3, but let's be honest, it's just the finale. No daytime exploration, no extra loot runs, just straight shot to the final boss of the run. It's like the game got bored of its own pacing and decided, you know what? Screw it, let's wrap this up. So, you actually get 2 days of build-up and then one big climactic throwdown. It's not bad, but it does feel a little rough to have no more time to build yourself up, especially since the difficulty spike between boss 2 and 3 drastically shoots up. But we'll get into that later. Now that we've covered what the game is, let's talk about how it actually plays, because all the fancy systems and genre mashups in the world don't mean diddly squat if the game handles like a drunk driver in an old Ford. Thankfully, albeit perhaps unsurprisingly to anyone familiar with Elden Ring, the moment-to-moment gameplay in Nightreign feels great. Movement is smooth and responsive, attacks flow well, and each has its distinct weight and impact. Combat remains just as deliberate and timing-focused as you'd hope, with dodges, parries, and well-placed sword swings being the difference between glorious victory and becoming a stain on the floor. But there's also a slightly more agile, I'd say almost arcadey feel to it. It's snappier, more focused, built to keep the pace brisk as you move through each run. One of the most immediate and impactful changes is the addition of ledge climbing. Oh yeah, Tarnish has finally been to a parkour class. No longer must you helplessly fling yourself at a waist-high ledge only to slide off like a confused goat. You can actually climb now, which opens up vertical exploration in a way that feels fresh and liberating, and honestly something I've been desperately missing since Sekiro. And get this, no fall damage. I repeat, no fall damage. Go ahead, yeet yourself off a cliff. It's fine. It's fun. These small changes turn traversal from a cautious foot measuring ordeal into a full-blown playground of shortcuts, cliff jumping, and ledge hopping. All of this makes the map not just easy to get around, but genuinely fun to explore. You can zip across the terrain, leap off ruins, scale towers, dive into fights, which you need to get done quickly due to how quickly your clock is ticking. Exploration doesn't feel like it slows you down. It feels like it propels you forward, and that's huge in a game like this. I do, however, need to get into one of my biggest nitpicks with this game. As I said before, each class has an ability and an ultimate. These abilities are locked behind a 2-button input, being Y and then the left trigger or the right trigger. Or triangle and R2L2 if you're using a PlayStation controller. Why, Miyazaki? Why? Why do I have to hit a 2-button combo in order to use the abilities I'm going to be using more than anything else? Do you know how easy it is to not hit one of the buttons while in combat? Or worse, you hit the left trigger and then the Y button instead of the other way around? So now, instead of using my evasion ability to get out of danger, my character is sitting there trying to do their slow-ass weapon art ability. This is one of the only things in the game that feels wonky, and that would barely be a problem except the fact that you have to do this all the time. It's your main ability. That being said though, that's not a huge issue, but it certainly is noticeable. I do have other nitpicks with the game though, and I'm just gonna kind of rattle them off here. The difficulty spike between Night 2 and what the game calls Day 3 but is really just boss fight time is absolutely bonkers. One moment, you're wrapping up a fight with a boss that, at worst, might make you use all of your flasks, or mutter a quiet, "Oh, that's annoying." And then suddenly, the game slaps you with the final boss of the run, a screen-filling monster who hits approximately 1,000,000 times a second, has the mobility of a caffeinated hummingbird, and can zip across the arena in roughly 0.0023 seconds. It's the equivalent of getting into a slap fight with a teenager and then being immediately drafted into a UFC cage match against a teleporting Eldritch deity that thinks your face is a personal insult. The contrast is jarring. There's no transition, no breathing room, no sense of progression between challenging but fair and congratulations, you're now fighting Nightreign, the World Eater, Destroyer of Joy. He has 80 arms, and they all exist solely to repeatedly, violently, and unrelentingly bitch slap you into oblivion. And yes, also he teleports, because why wouldn't he? The fix here actually feels pretty obvious. Just give us an actual day 3. Add one final exploration phase. That's it. A little more time to gather runes, level up, maybe snag some better gear, or just emotionally prepare for the carnage that's about to ensue. Give us a moment to breathe, to feel like we've earned our way into this final showdown, rather than just being sucker punched by it. Just that one extra cycle would go such a long way towards smoothing out the pacing and making the transition in the final fight feel less like whiplash and more like the epic culmination of a hard-fought run. Another nitpick I need to talk about? Why are there so few boss varieties from the Dark Souls games? Like, don't get me wrong, it's genuinely cool that they included them at all. I'm not ungrateful, but here's the thing. You had 3 full games to pull from. 3 entire games filled with unforgettable and iconic bosses, and you only picked 2 bosses per game? That's it? That's all we get? You're already reusing some map bosses as end-of-night bosses, which admittedly feels a little lazy on its own. Would it really have killed you to throw a little more love towards the Dark Souls roster? And let's talk about their choices, because, oh boy, they are questionable. From Dark Souls 1, you pick Gaping Dragon and Centipede Demon? Really? Really? Gaping Dragon? I can maybe understand, it's big, it's gross, it's iconic, but Centipede Demon? That boss was barely interesting in its own game. And it stings, even more when you consider what the alternatives could have been. You had Quelaag, an absolute classic. You had Artorias, who basically carried the entire DLC on his one good shoulder. And, I don't know, maybe Gwyn? The literal final boss and thematic heart of the entire first game? Instead, we get a lava bug that people only remember because he's in objectively the worst part of that game. It's baffling. The real kicker to me, though, is how heavily the trailers leaned on this. Look, we've got Dark Souls bosses for sale, the marketing screamed as if to say, we're bringing the legends back, look at our pantheon. But when you dive in and realize the guest list is 6 bosses, some of whom you forgot existed until just now, it does feel a little underwhelming. Honestly, it borders on being lazy, or at the very least, extremely undercooked. Like, they ran out of time or just didn't want to go through the effort of adapting some of the more complex bosses. It's not really a deal breaker, but it's a huge missed opportunity. There's so much potential here, and they really only scratched the surface. Like, if you're gonna make a Soulsborne greatest hit mixtape, maybe throw in more than 2 tracks per album, and maybe don't lead it off with Centipede Demon. Alright, for my final nitpick, I'll admit, this one might lean more into personal bewilderment territory than full-on critique. The matchmaking system. For reasons known only to Miyazaki and possibly some ancient cosmic entity, Elden Ring Nightreign is strictly a single-player or 3-player experience. That's it. Those are your options. I'll repeat that just to make sure it fully sinks in. You can either go it alone, or you can squad up with 2 other people exactly. No more, no less. And my question here is really a simple one. Why? Why, Nightreign? What did duos ever do to you? I don't get it. Why can't I team up with one other friend and take on the horrors of the lands between together? Buddy cop style. Why is it all or nothing? It's not like this is some tightly scripted campaign that would break from a narrative weight of a second player. It's a roguelike. I mean, this isn't even a full-blown complaint as much as it is a confused shrug. I just don't understand the logic behind it. It feels very arbitrary, especially in a game that otherwise gives you so much flexibility in how you build, explore, and fight. Letting players run solo or with full trio but skipping right over duos is so strange to me. And look, I'm sure there's some kind of technical or balance-related reason for it, but for the life of me, I could not tell you what it was. Especially since whether you play alone or with 3 people does not change the difficulty. It's not like there's an easy single-player mode and then a souped-up rebalance for 3 players, unless I'm missing something. And if I am, be sure to tell me in the comments, but single-player and 3-player are exactly the same difficulty. So what would be the big issue if I play with a 2-person party if it literally changes nothing? Now, with all of that being said, I want to be clear, these critiques, while worth mentioning, do not overshadow the core experience. They're nitpicks, areas where I see potential for improvement, not deal-breaking flaws. For the most part, I have genuinely had a great time with Nightreign. It nails the essentials, the combat feels solid, the roguelike structure adds an exciting layer of unpredictability, and the presentation, especially for a spin-off game, holds up remarkably well. There are certainly a few design choices that could be refined to make the game feel smoother, tighter, and maybe a bit more thoughtful in terms of variety and balance, but these are tweaks, not red flags. Is the game perfect? Absolutely not. But it never really promised perfection. What it promised was Elden Ring meets roguelike, and on that front, I think it delivers. And for a $40 price tag, it's actually a pretty fair offering. The core gameplay loop is satisfying, there's a clear foundation for future updates or expansions, and for fans of the Soulsborne series looking for something a little lighter and more replayable, it really does hit a sweet spot. Hopefully we'll start to see some post-launch support. Maybe a few more bosses, a little bit more diversity in encounters, and some polish around the difficulty curve and matchmaking options. These updates could go a long way towards making Nightreign feel like a fuller, more cohesive package. But don't get me wrong. Even in its current state, it's a fun, replayable game that does what it sets out to do. It provides a bite-sized, chaotic version of Elden Ring that you can hop into for a quick run or two, especially with friends. So, bottom line, Elden Ring Nightreign is a flawed but fun experiment. It may not be the kind of game I sink hundreds of hours into like the main titles, but it absolutely earns its place as a side adventure. A fast-paced, co-op-friendly take on a world we already love. If you go in with the right expectations, I really do think you're likely to come out with some great experiences, a few laughs, and a healthy respect for just how fast that final boss can teleport punch you in the face.